Harvard University, a name synonymous with academic excellence, a beacon of higher learning that has shaped leaders and influenced global thought for centuries. The name alone conjures images of prestige, a legacy built on groundbreaking research, intellectual rigor, and the promise of a brighter future. Power, the kind that shapes nations and dictates the course of history, wielded by generations of Harvard graduates, and untouchable excellence, an institution that seems to stand apart, a fortress of knowledge and enlightenment. For centuries, Harvard's reputation has gleamed like a superhero's shield, impenetrable, flawless, a symbol of unwavering integrity. But what if that shield hides a deep, ugly crack? A fissure that threatens to shatter the carefully constructed image of perfection? What if Harvard's past is darker than it wants anyone to know? A past filled with uncomfortable truths and morally questionable choices. This isn't just a dry historical debate. It's not simply about dusty archives and forgotten dates. It's a real-life drama. A historian hired to investigate Harvard's ties to slavery, to unearth the truth about the university's financial and intellectual dependence on this horrific practice, only to uncover truths the university would rather keep buried. Secrets that could tarnish its reputation and challenge its very identity. Dr. Christoph Strobel was tasked with digging into Harvard's past, with the understanding that his research would be objective and unbiased. What he found wasn't a minor footnote, a mere historical anomaly. It was a sprawling, disturbing history, a deeply ingrained connection to the institution of slavery that permeated every aspect of Harvard's existence, woven into the university's very foundation. A legacy built in part on the backs of enslaved people. And when he revealed the full extent of this legacy, when he presented his findings to the university, the reaction was not what he expected. He found himself out of a job. His contract terminated, his research sidelined. Can an institution truly investigate itself? Can it be truly objective when its own reputation is on the line? What happens when the truth is more damaging than the lie? When the cost of acknowledging the past is too high to bear? Buckle up. We're diving into the murky waters of Harvard's hidden past, a journey into the heart of institutional denial and the struggle for historical truth. In 2019, under mounting pressure from students, faculty, and the wider community, Harvard announced the creation of a $100 million fund. This wasn't just a donation. It was framed as a reparative measure, explicitly designed to confront its extensive and deeply troubling ties to slavery. The initiative was grand, headline-grabbing, a public acknowledgement of historical wrongs, and meant to show the world that Harvard was serious, truly committed to reckoning with its past and the legacy of slavery. The plan, the stated intention, was to fund extensive research into the university's historical connections to slavery, create memorials to those who were enslaved, and, crucially, to support descendant communities, offering resources and opportunities. Harvard's leaders publicly admitted for the first time in such a definitive way that their vast wealth was built, at least in part, on the backs of enslaved people and the profits generated by slavery and related industries. This was supposed to be a bold step, a turning point, with Harvard leading the way, setting an example for other institutions grappling with their own historical legacies. But big gestures, especially those involving large sums of money, can be as much about carefully controlling the narrative, shaping public perception, as about a genuine, unfettered pursuit of historical truth. With $100 million at its disposal, Harvard could effectively decide which questions got asked, which research projects received funding and support, and perhaps more importantly, which uncomfortable questions didn't. The university clearly wanted to be seen as a leader in this area, a beacon of progress, but only on its own terms, within the carefully constructed parameters it had set. The real test of Harvard's commitment would come when the research inevitably started to reveal just how deeply and extensively those ties to slavery ran, potentially uncovering uncomfortable truths. History, as Harvard was about to learn in a very public and potentially damaging way, doesn't always stick to the script. And sometimes, the truth has a way of emerging despite the best-laid plans. Enter Dr. Christoph Strobel, a dedicated historian driven by a profound sense of justice. A historian from UMass Lowell, hired in 2021 specifically for a task of immense historical and ethical weight. His mission was to lead a team, carefully selected for their expertise and dedication, digging through the vast archives of Harvard University. His mission: find the real names and stories, the individual lives buried within the institutional history of the enslaved people whose forced labor and suffering were inextricably connected to the very foundations of Harvard. Strobel was meticulous, a true truth detective, approaching each document with a critical eye and unwavering commitment. Determined to turn abstract history, cold statistics, and impersonal records into a list of real human beings, individuals with names, families, and stories. Restoring identities erased by time, by the deliberate acts of those who sought to dehumanize and exploit them. He and his team pored over centuries of records, meticulously examining every detail, every fragment of information, tracing the money, the financial transactions that revealed the university's reliance on the slave economy, the families, both those who enslaved and those who were enslaved, untangling the complex web of relationships, the connections, the intricate links between individuals, institutions, and the pervasive system of slavery. Every name they found was a victory against erasure, a testament to the enduring power of human dignity. Harvard's initial report identified, after some preliminary investigation, about 30 enslaved people tied to the university, a number that seemed shockingly low given the historical context. But Strobel's research suggested, with increasing certainty, that was just the beginning, a mere glimpse into the true extent of Harvard's involvement. He uncovered evidence that the number was far higher, potentially reaching into the hundreds, if not more, and that slavery's influence ran deep, far beyond a few isolated incidents or donations, into Harvard's wealth and identity, shaping its very character and contributing to its rise as a prestigious institution. Strobel was about to present findings, meticulously documented and irrefutably supported by historical evidence, that would shake the institution to its core, forcing it to confront a painful and long-ignored chapter of its history. The truth he uncovered was bigger, more complex, more pervasive, and more uncomfortable than anyone expected, challenging the very narrative Harvard had constructed about itself. And Harvard wasn't ready, not for the full weight of the truth that Dr. Strobel was about to reveal. Harvard's official 2022 report named over 70 enslaved individuals linked to its presidents, faculty, and staff, a shocking admission. But Strobel's ongoing research revealed the real number was likely several hundred, maybe more. He traced not just direct ownership, but the flow of wealth from slave plantations into Harvard's endowment. Strobel's work restored names, family ties, and stories, making the horror of slavery personal and undeniable. This wasn't about a few bad actors. It was about an entire institution built on exploitation. The official report was damage control. Strobel's research showed the foundation itself was compromised. Harvard and slavery were deeply intertwined. This changed the narrative. Harvard's existence was inseparable from the profits of slavery. Strobel's meticulous documentation made the truth impossible to ignore. And that, for Harvard, was a problem. In late 2023, as Strobel prepared to present his expanded findings, his contract was abruptly not renewed. The project was reorganized, and Strobel was shut out, his database taken over by the university. The timing was suspicious, and Strobel went public, claiming Harvard wanted to control the narrative and keep the numbers manageable. The media pounced. Harvard pushes out historian who unearthed deeper slavery ties. Critics saw it as a classic case of silencing a whistleblower. Why fire the person doing the most important work? Harvard's silence fueled speculation. Was the truth too costly for its brand? For Strobel, it was a personal and professional blow. His work, and the stories he uncovered, now out of his hands. The message was clear: find the truth, but don't make us look bad. The controversy became a flashpoint for academic freedom and institutional power. Harvard responded with corporate spin. Strobel wasn't fired, his contract just ended, and the project was being restructured. They praised the research while downplaying Strobel's role, insisting the work would continue under their own staff. Critics weren't buying it. Why remove the expert who built the project? To many, it looked like Harvard wanted to seize control of the data and the story. This fit a familiar pattern. When institutions face crisis, they control the flow of information. By bringing the research in-house, Harvard could manage what was released, when and how. The move seemed less about preservation and more about containment. Harvard wanted credit for confronting its past, but without the risk of unpredictable revelations. Their vague explanations satisfied no one. When you fire the person who finds the skeletons, people connect the dots. Why does this matter? Because it's not just about the past. It's about the present and future. The legacy of slavery lives on in today's inequalities, and Harvard's wealth is part of that story. Universities should be sanctuaries for truth, not protectors of their own image. Punishing a researcher for uncomfortable findings sends a chilling message. There are limits to the truth we'll tolerate. This undermines public trust and the mission of higher education. Before we can talk about reparations or justice, we need the full truth. Strobel's work provided the facts needed for real conversations about repair. To stifle that research is to block the path to justice. Telling these stories isn't about shame. It's about honesty and progress. The Harvard case is a test of our collective courage to face history as it truly was. Harvard's controversy is part of a global reckoning. Elite institutions everywhere are being forced to confront their sanitized histories. Apologies and funds are easy. Real accountability is harder. Naming the hundreds enslaved and calculating the value of their stolen labor is a moral and financial crisis, not just a PR problem. True reckoning means giving descendant communities a say, allowing independent research and transforming the institution itself. The fear is that institutions want credit for facing the past without doing the painful work. The choices made now will define their legacy. Will they lead the way to justice or retreat into self-protection? So where does this leave us? Harvard pledged $100 million to face its history, but when the truth got too big, the messenger was shown the door. Strobel did his job. He honored the forgotten, and for that, he was pushed out. Harvard wanted a story it could control, but got a reality it couldn't spin. The questions now: can institutions be trusted to investigate themselves? Was Strobel punished for telling the truth? The answers will reveal whether these projects are about justice or just PR. The story isn't over. The world is watching what Harvard does next. Strobel's work brought the truth into the light, and now it can't be unseen. The shield is cracked, and no amount of polish can hide what lies beneath.